So this video is for Francis Maxwell from the Young Turks. I kind of wanted to address a couple of errors that I think you have in your line of reasoning for what you've been on lately, and it's very similar to you've probably seen Jonathan Pye's video, namely because everything that you've been spitting has been his flawed logic. And I just want to explain to you so that you may understand exactly some of the key errors in your line and his line of reasoning. So you have this idea that the left is to fault, essentially, for truth telling, or for telling the truth in a way that is unsavory, unsatisfactory to the recipients or the conservative right. So you have this idea that because we say, hey, you're racist, regardless of the truthhood of it, because we hurt their feelings, that it creates problems. So telling them a truth, and if that truth happens to be you are a racist because you hold racist beliefs, that in itself is what caused a Trump presidency. That's your belief. If you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why this is dangerous thinking is because what it plays into is this this coddling of the conservative right, and this whole idea. It's just like you guys talk about it all the time, and Jake talks about it all the time. So you guys should understand how the left constantly compromises their integrity, constantly compromises their values and what they know to be right for the sake of the conservative right, because there's this false notion that if we give in, that they'll be more understanding. But you guys know, if anybody, that that's not the case, and that any ground we yield, they're not going to be understanding on a political level, congressional level, nothing. What's the biggest criticism that Obama gets is being too accommodating to the conservative right. I mean, some people believe that he's actually conservative and Republican, because he worries so much about making sure that he doesn't offend the conservative right. So what you don't see that you're doing is you're contributing to this cuck-hood, this cuckness of the left, that we get constantly stereotyped as being these people who are just, you could just pushovers, essentially. And so what you fail to realize is how it's a false equivalency. You contribute to this idea that there should be this neutrality of the sides when one side deals with reason and the other side doesn't. Trump supporters, by and large, if they looked at the facts, would not be Trump supporters. In fact, if you were to ever talk to any of them, you talk to them, they do not look at the facts. What the reason why they support Trump, by and large, and I know you don't want to say it, but common sense tells you that it's despite reason, evidence, and facts. And it's usually based on some kind of baser instinct, like racism, or I want a man as a president, or whatever base instinct. But if you've ever had a conversation, and if you have a conversation, people like you want to believe that, well, if I just explain it to them, they'll understand. I'm hoping they'll understand. But what you don't realize is that one side operates on reason, logic, evidence, and facts, and the other one just dismisses it, spits on it, and looks down on education. And the more you contribute to this coddling of the conservative right to be in their little non-PC bubble, the more you are contributing to us moving steadfastly into an idiocracy. And by that, I mean you're contributing to the dumbing down of our populace, the dumbing down of our language. If you've ever seen the movie Idiocracy, you see that their language has evolved into what they say, a combination of slurs, slang, and Valley Girl, to where, so what's happening is this derision towards PC culture is underlying it is this derision towards intellectualism and this derision towards the elite. And you guys talked about it in a couple of your recent shows, but it's this really strong derision towards the elite. And some of that is well-founded in terms of the political elite who's corrupt as fuck, right? But really, it's just this derision towards education and intellectualism. And they spit, it's just like, there's a reason why a lot of them are Christian. Not because they're actually Christian, but because they have religious-like tendencies. And, you know, religious-like tendencies and religious zeal, they don't look at reason. You can't reason with them. You can't sit down with them and be like, well, I'm not going to call you a nutcase. Instead, I'm going to reason with you why there isn't this guy who was a zombie that came to life 3 days later. You know, you can't reason with people that there's this guy, he's not, there's no guy in the sky that listens to your little whispers of a dream that Bernie Sanders will become president. There is no guy, right? But there's no reasoning with them. So the more you contribute to this idea that we need to coddle and give a safe space to conservative right, which, you know, if you can't see the irony, I mean, I kind of spelled it out for you that they want a safe space. But the more you contribute to catering to them, the more you contribute to the stereotype that we are cucks, and the more that you contribute to this dumbing down and this enabling and emboldening of all the things that are going wrong with our society. And another thing you don't realize is that, I know you realize your own white privilege, and you think you do, but you are lacking in some of the insights that you aren't even aware of. So you have this idea that, oh, you know, we've been calling them racists for God knows how many years, and look how that's turned out. But what you don't realize is that that's actually the reason why we've progressed is because people speak truth to power. Is the reason why up until Donald Trump presidency that we've gotten this notion that, oh my God, I can't believe there would be so many people supporting a racist candidate. We have made progress, but all you can focus on is the fact that we have this Donald Trump presidency, and you fail to realize that we have made a lot of progress because of that tactic, because people have actually called out the truth. And if your tactic is going to be withhold the truth from people, or to present it in a more tactful way that doesn't hurt their feelings, because I don't know if you know this, but racism is on a scale, it's on a gradient. So most people, what they don't realize is that when I call you a racist, they think that, oh, it's like KKK status, but it's not always that blatant and that direct. We're all on a gradient of racism, and what really needs to take place is more education on racism, systemic, institutional racism, and racism. All this stuff needs to be taught in the schools. And as far as adults are a lot harder to deal with. There's a reason why shaming is done. It's not because, oh, you know, they have otherwise valid thoughts, but we just want to shame their thoughts. We don't want them to think a certain way. No, there's a reason why the thoughts that they have are shamed. The problem is with their thoughts. The problem isn't with the idea that we're shaming them into not sharing those thoughts. And so that's where you and Jonathan Pye have this flawed idea that the problem was that the polls couldn't read accurately the voice of the people because the conservative right was too afraid to say to anybody they're closeted Trump supporters. So you're confusing the accuracy of the polls with the actual Donald Trump presidency. They're not the same problem. The problem that you are talking about has nothing to do with the problem that actually exists. The problem is Trump. All right, the problem is the fact that we have a Trump presidency, and it has very little to do with whether or not they're comfortable saying it to other people. It has everything to do with the fact that they're comfortable thinking that in the first place. And so yeah, those are my main points. I have a lot more other points, but those, in review, you are contributing to this idea that the left needs to do more compromising of their own integrity. We need to withhold some of the truth so that way we have a more effective way of getting our message across to those who would otherwise receive it, but they wouldn't otherwise receive it. You guys did like an Uber video where, you know, all these acts of hate towards people of other races and religion, they are the people who you want to speak out against it. They're not going to. You know why? Because if they were likely to speak out against racism, they would have been compelled to during the general election. They had a chance to speak out against racism, and that is with a vote against Trump. So don't expect the other people, the reasonable Trump supporters, to be anything but indifferent towards racism that happens, or sexism, or misogyny, or harassment. Don't expect them to be any more than indifferent, because at best, that's the very best that they were, is indifferent towards it. A lot of people were in favor of it, like the guy in the video who harassed the Uber driver. But at best, the reasonable Trump supporters looked racism right in the eye and said, what harm could he actually do? He's white. And that's the base thinking, is that he can't do much harm because he's actually white. If it were Colin Kaepernick saying, yeah, we need to make America great again, it would be, oh hell no, we need to fucking lock this guy up and, you know, ship him back to wherever he came from. But because Donald Trump is white, they have this idea, well, he doesn't really mean it, right? So those are your best Trump supporters. Most reasonable Trump supporters are willfully ignorant and willfully apathetic and indifferent to racism. So you shouldn't hold on to this hope that they're going to speak out against it, because they're not going to. They haven't ever, likely, in their life, and they haven't when it most counted, and that's with a Donald Trump presidency.